Hello listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Conspiracy Vault. This week we will be discussing the Devil's Triangle, located roughly between 3 points: the Florida Keys, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. The subject of interest for many people, including ufologists, storm chasers, tourists, divers, and those seeking the lost city of Atlantis. Today we will be discussing the deadly Bermuda Triangle. It is not known exactly how many aircraft, ships, and people have been lost to the Bermuda Triangle, but there are currently some strange events that have taken place within its coordinates in the years gone by, from unexplained occurrences to ships found abandoned with food still cooking and cigarettes still burning in ashtrays, from black holes to equipment malfunctions. The Bermuda Triangle seems to have it all. But is it as sinister as it really seems? Well, according to Britannica.com, this is what is known about the area. The Bermuda Triangle is a region of the North Atlantic Ocean roughly bounded by the southeastern coast of the US, Bermuda, and the area of Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and Cuba. The exact boundaries of the Bermuda Triangle are not universally agreed upon. Approximations of the total area range between 500,000 and 1,510,000 square miles. By all approximations, the region has a vaguely triangular shape. The Bermuda Triangle does not appear on any world maps, and the US Board on Geographic Names does not recognize the Bermuda Triangle as an official region of the Atlantic Ocean. Although reports of unexplained occurrences in the region date to the mid-19th century, the phrase Bermuda Triangle didn't come into use until 1964. The phrase first appeared in print in a pulp magazine article by Vincent Gaddis, who used the phrase to describe the Triangle region that has destroyed hundreds of ships and planes without a trace. Wikipedia says that Vincent Hayes Gaddis, born December 28, 1913, was an American author who invented the phrase Bermuda Triangle, which he used first in the cover article for the 1964 February issue of the magazine Argosy. He popularized many stories about anomalous and paranormal phenomena in a style similar to that of Charles Fort. It should be noted that Argosy is a pulp science fiction magazine. Despite its reputation, the Bermuda Triangle does not have a high incidence of disappearances. Disappearances do not occur with greater frequency in the Bermuda Triangle than in any other comparable region of the Atlantic Ocean. In 2013, the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, conducted an exhaustive study of maritime shipping lanes and determined that the Bermuda Triangle is not one of the world's top 10 most dangerous bodies of water for shipping. The Bermuda Triangle sustains heavy daily traffic both by sea and air. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily travelled shipping lanes in the world. The Argonic Line sometimes passes through the Bermuda Triangle, including a period in the early 20th century. The Argonic Line is a place on Earth's surface where true north and magnetic north align, and there is no need to account for magnetic declination on a compass. The Bermuda Triangle is subject to frequent tropical storms and hurricanes. The Gulf Stream, a strong ocean current known to cause sharp changes in local weather, passes through the Bermuda Triangle. The deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, the Milwaukee Depth, is located in the Bermuda Triangle. Puerto Rico Trench reaches a depth of 27,493 feet. What is not known about the Bermuda Triangle is the exact number of ships and airplanes that have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The most common estimate is about 50 ships and 20 airplanes. The wreckage of many ships and airplanes reported missing in the region have never been recovered. It is not known whether disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle have been the result of human error or something else. So given the extensive list here that supports the Bermuda Triangle not having a significantly high number of disappearances and not even being recognised in the top 10 bodies of dangerous waters, or even as a location to be drawn onto the world map, what has given this area its notorious reputation? Well, here are some of the strange occurrences to date. The first of many notable events dates all the way back to 1492, when Christopher Columbus was making his grand voyage across the seas. 3 things happened in the month of September as Columbus and his crew travelled through the middle of the North Atlantic, sailing towards the Bermuda Triangle. However, only one of these 3 occurrences happened within the so-called triangle itself. First of all, there was something seen in the sky which was described as fireballs. The second was the compasses of Columbus and his crew all stopped working, and lastly there was something described as a light in the sky that lifted off and suddenly vanished. This light was later described as a sort of candle that lifted off and disappeared into the distance. Columbus wasn't worried about this, as he assumed it must be coming from land ahead and be a sign of the natives that lived there. Sure enough, soon after, Columbus arrived in America. Another notable event took place in 1918. History.com reads, "How could the biggest ship in the US Navy vanish without trace?" This was the question on many people's minds in March 1918 when an enormous collier, the USS Cyclops, disappeared on a voyage between the West Indies to Baltimore. A century on, it's no closer to being answered. The Cyclops was nearly 550 feet long, with a crew of 306 people and around 11,000 tons of manganese on board. She had been sailing successfully since 1910, travelling between the Baltic Sea, the Caribbean and Mexico, and assisting with moving coal around the world and helping refugees. But in 1917, when America entered World War I, Cyclops became a key naval asset, transporting troops and coal to fuel other ships around the world. In March 1918, the ship was given a new cargo, tons and tons of dense manganese ore, used in steel making. She left Brazil, loaded up with the brittle metal, then voyaged to Barbados to resupply for the long journey home to Baltimore. The last known message from the ship said simply, "Weather fair, all well." But on the 9-day journey, something went awry, and no one from the ship was ever seen or heard from again, vanishing without even an SOS. In a feature published a couple of years after the ship's disappearance, Santa Fe magazine described the strangeness of the disappearance. Usually a wooden bucket or a cork life preserver identified as belonging to a ship is picked up after a wreck, but not so with the Cyclops, they reported. She just disappeared as though some gigantic monster of the sea had grabbed her, men and all, and sent her to the depths of the ocean, and the suddenness of her destruction is amplified by the absence of any wireless calls for help being picked up by any ship along the route. On January 9, 1921, the Carroll A. Deering, a 5-mast commercial schooner, was on a journey from Barbados to Virginia when it was found abandoned. All equipment including life vests, lifeboats and other rescue gear was missing from the boat. But there was food still on the stove. And even stranger still, the steering wheel and other parts of the ship appeared to have been purposefully smashed with a sledgehammer. Later, an SOS bottle washed up on shore, found by a man who took it to newspapers. It spoke of how the ship had been overtaken by pirates, but this was later debunked when professionals were able to prove that the man who found the SOS bottle had written the note himself. However, the most referred to explanation is mutiny aboard the ship between the captain and the crew. Around 30 years later, another strange event occurred, and possibly one of the most infamous events of the Bermuda Triangle itself, and that is the case of Flight 19. On the 5th of December 1945, a squadron of 5 US Navy Avenger aircrafts left a naval base in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, on a routine training exercise within the Bermuda Triangle. 14 experienced pilots and crew were aboard these aircraft. 2 hours into the exercise, the planes were supposed to be headed back, but the leading plane's pilot, Charles Taylor, sent a transmission explaining that he was disorientated as his compasses didn't seem to be working. "I don't know where we are," one of the pilots said over the radio. "We must have got lost after that last turn." It is assumed at this point that instead of turning west towards land, the planes went east. It is thought that when Taylor sent a transmission suggesting that they were near Florida, they were in fact closer to a different set of islands near the Bahamas. History.com goes on to say Taylor was eventually persuaded to turn around and head west, but shortly after 6 p.m, he seems to have cancelled the order and once again changed direction. "We didn't go far enough east," he said, still worried that he might be in the Gulf. "We may as well just turn around and go east again." His pilots probably argued against this decision. Some investigators even believe that one of the planes broke off and flew in a different direction, but most followed their commander's lead. Flight 19's radio transmission soon became increasingly faint as it meandered out to sea. When fuel began to run low, Taylor was heard prepping his men for a potential crash landing in the ocean. "All planes close up tight," he said. "We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." A few minutes later, the Avenger's last radio communications were replaced by an eerie buzz of static. No trace or evidence of any of the 5 planes was ever seen or heard from again. A few hours into the first distress call, another aircraft was sent on a search and rescue mission. After a routine transmission, this aircraft too vanished and disappeared without a trace. Although a number of ships reported seeing fire and smoke around the same location that this plane would have been located in at that moment in time if it was headed directly towards the location that Flight 19 squadron was thought to be in, it could be that this plane malfunctioned and blew up in mid-air. History.com says, at first light the next day, the Navy dispatched more than 300 boats and aircraft to look for Flight 19 and the missing mariner. The search party spent 5 days combing through more than 300,000 square miles of territory, to no avail. They just vanished, Navy Lieutenant David White later recalled. We had hundreds of planes out looking, and we searched over land and water for days, and nobody ever found any bodies or any debris. A Navy Board of Investigation was also left scratching its head. While it argued that Taylor might have confused the Bahamas for the Florida Keys after his compasses malfunctioned, it could find no clear explanation for why Flight 19 had become so disorientated. Its members eventually attributed the loss to causes of reasons unknown. It is speculated that Taylor had a history of getting lost and that this wasn't the first time this had happened. It has also been suggested that there was a lot of adverse weather in the direction that the fleet was thought to have headed under Taylor's direction. Had the aircraft decided to head east and stick with that direction instead, they would most likely have come across land before their crafts ran out of fuel. And despite there being no formal conclusion to the investigation of the aircraft's disappearances, it is thought that the aircraft ran out of fuel and fell victim to the ocean. The SV Constellation, the inspiration for Peter Benchley's The Deep, is a ship that sank on July 31st, 1943. The four-mast schooner was on a cargo run from New York to Venezuela carrying 2,000 tons of cement bags, photographs, Johnny Walker whiskey, and many vials of morphine and iodine. It was the last wooden schooner that was licensed to make a trip out of New York. During its voyage, the boat began taking on water, taking 2 weeks to get through a body of water instead of a usual 2 days. The captain decided to stop in Bermuda to repair the ship, but being unfamiliar with the reefs of the area, the ship hit something and eventually ran aground. It was later revealed that the ship itself most likely hit the bow of another sunken ship called the Montana that sank in 1863. Because of this, the wrecks are only 100 feet apart in the water, basically lying on top of one another. On January 30th, 1948, a plane named the Star Tiger vanished near Bermuda. There were reports of bad weather, including wind and rain, on this date. However, strangely, a year later, on the 17th of January 1948, a sister plane named Star Ariel left Bermuda for Jamaica, and after sending out a routine transmission, vanished also and was never seen again. Another strange occurrence happened with pilot Bruce Gernon. ABCnews.com says, Bruce Gernon, author of The Fog, a never-before-published theory of the Bermuda Triangle phenomenon, thinks there's something else at work here. In his book, he details an experience he said he had while flying off the Florida coast in 1970, when he claims he flew into an electric fog and time-travelled. Some of the instruments were malfunctioning, the wet compass was spinning slowly, counterclockwise all by itself. The electronic navigational instruments were all malfunctioning, Gernon said, and at the same time I travelled 30 minutes through time. Gernon said what pulled him into the fog was the same force that swallowed others into the Bermuda Triangle's black hole, and he thinks he was lucky to get out. TheQuesterFiles.com also had some interesting coverage on a lighthouse disappearance within the Bermuda Triangle. The website reads, all the easiest and most logical excuses to explain away a boat disappearance are absent in the case of an eerie mystery of Great Isaac's Rock. An island cannot sink in storm, hit rocks, get lost, founder, burn away or get stolen. Yet in 1969, Great Isaac's Rock, an islet whose only inhabitants were two lighthouse keepers, Ivan Major and B. Mollings, was found to be deserted. The two keepers were mysteriously gone without a trace. On August 4th, 1969, a launch was sent from nearby Bimini when the calls to the lighthouse repeatedly went unanswered. There, the searchers found everything ship-shape. Strange voices jolted them only briefly until they realised it was routine chatter over the radio receiver from passing boats. The Bahamian government tried to suggest a drug smuggling incident, though it seems to be a guess more than an explanation. There was no evidence to suggest that this was the case. Logically, it is hard to understand why drug smugglers would land on a government station and kidnap the employees. The alternative, of course, is that one of the two keepers might have known too much about a smuggling ring and was put out of the way before he could talk, though landing on a government station and killing both keepers seems desperate if not stupid. For most certainly, the lighthouse keepers could radio that unauthorised boat and some shady characters were landing on the island. Could the drug smugglers take the chance as they boldly approached the island? So what theories have been presented to explain some of the disappearances that seemingly have no proof of what happened? Here are some fan favourites from 30a.com. 1. Methane gas. Some people believe methane gas is responsible for bringing ships and planes to their watery graves in the Triangle. It has been proven that sizable amounts of methane gas exist in some spots on the ocean floor. A wormhole. For the science fiction enthusiasts, the wormhole theory holds a lot of appeal. A wormhole is essentially a space-time shortcut that could, in theory, even potentially allow time travel. Waterspouts, which are basically like a tornado in the ocean, have been seen in the Bermuda Triangle. During the weather phenomenon, water from the ocean is sucked hundreds or thousands of feet into the air. Number 4. A hole in the planet's electromagnetic forces. The Bermuda Triangle appears to be one of the places on Earth where compasses have trouble pinpointing true north. Number 5. Human error. If you're looking for a deep mystery, you might be disappointed by this theory, but the truth is that simple mistakes cause a lot of accidents every year, both in the sea and in the air. Number 6. The lost city of Atlantis lies within the Bermuda Triangle and has something to do with the strange goings-on within the area. And lastly, aliens. No discussion of Bermuda Triangle theories can overlook the alien explanation. While there's no reason to believe aliens are behind any of the Bermuda Triangle accidents, aliens can be a convenient scapegoat any time there is an unexplained disappearance. The final scenes of Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind depicts pilots from every decade returning to Earth, intact and unharmed from a friendly alien ship, including those from the fleet of Flight 19. But not every unsolved mystery of the Bermuda Triangle will stay unsolved forever, debunking almost all these conspiracy theories listed above. LiveScience.com tells us that the CSS Cotopaxi left Charleston, South Carolina on November 29, 1925, with a cargo of coal, but the vessel didn't make it far. A storm wiped out the ship, and none of the 32 people on board were ever seen or heard from again. Miraculously, the identification of a nearly 100-year-old shipwreck has debunked a popular conspiracy theory that the Bermuda Triangle was somehow involved in the 1925 disappearance of the SS Cotopaxi. The steam-powered bulk carrier never made it to its destination in Havana. The real cherry on top of the discovery, however, is that the CSX Cotopaxi shipwreck that was found by divers isn't even in the Bermuda Triangle, which stretches from Bermuda to Florida to Puerto Rico. That's the thing about this Bermuda Triangle. If you actually look at it on a map, most of the stories associated with it aren't even within its boundaries. Michael Barnett, a marine biologist and diver who identified the wreck, told Live Science. It's total rubbish. End quote. So what are your thoughts on the Bermuda Triangle? And do you have any stories about the area that aren't included in this episode? Get in touch and let me know. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CultVaultPod, or get in touch at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Conspiracy Vault.